Greetings, mighty companions. Anna Kujawa here, and we are doing A Course in Miracles, the Complete and Annotated Edition, like we do every Wednesday. So this is the latest edition of A Course in Miracles. It's the most original edition in that it contains the 45,000 words that came through the scribe Helen Schuckman that were left out of the first two editions and are in this edition, plus the notes from Robert Perry. So this is what I'm teaching out of tonight. And so, welcome to everybody who's there. Les and Carrie, and thank you, Les, for the same. And I'm so thrilled to see your names and to feel your energy. I'm thrilled that you've joined our healing circle. So just remember, like I always say in my classes, when we come together, even if it's in this virtual way, we are creating a healing circle. Whenever we come together to hear these ideas that are out of this world, that are not from this world, like us, we are healing our minds. We are expanding our consciousness. We are replacing our old beliefs in fear and guilt and shame and limitation with the loving, brilliant, limitless power, truth that A Course in Miracles is reminding us of. And so, I'm so glad that we're doing this together. How do you guys like my space background? I'm doing something different, so you let me know if it's too distracting. But this supposedly is actual footage from NASA. I'm guessing enhanced, but anyway. So I thought I'd give us a little cosmic energy for our healing circle today. So beautiful. So where we're at today is we are in Chapter 4, Section 8. And this section is called The Rewards of God. So we're starting a new section today, the rewards of God. So chapter 4, section 8, the rewards of God. Remember, I love your questions. I welcome your feedback and your questions. If there is something that you are going through today that you would really like to apply these ideas to, that you might have a miracle, a change of perception, and some peace around, then don't hesitate to text me and say, how do I apply this to what I'm going through? Everything in this is for practical application. It's to be used. It's for peace in any situation or relationship that you are experiencing not peace. So wonderful. Welcome, Jonas, and thank you, Michael, for, I think that's your, see that's the, did you see what just went over my head? Awesome. Okay, so we're going super far out today, super far out, and then we'll come back to Earth after we're done. All right, after we've gotten a little bit bigger perspective on things, we'll come on back. So, Chapter 4, Section 8, the rewards of God. So it says, it cannot be emphasized too often that correcting perception is merely a temporary expedient, okay? So it's not the end all, it's not the end all. Correct perception isn't the end all. You don't stop there once you get correct perception. It's just a temporary correction. Okay, and it says that correct perception is necessary only because misperception is a block to knowledge. So that's why correct perception is necessary, only because misperception is a block to knowledge, which means certainty of your truth. And it says, while accurate perception is a stepping stone toward knowledge, okay? So we need accurate perception. We need true perception because it is what gets us to knowledge, which is knowing beyond doubt. That's where we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to knowing the truth about ourselves, having total certainty about the truth of ourselves without any uncertainty, without any doubt. Correct perception is perception of the truth about ourselves. It's necessary. It's a necessary stepping stone toward the place where we don't need perception, because we're beyond belief and we're beyond doubt. So we don't have to worry about that. All we need to worry about is the correct perception part. And the correct perception is accurate perception. And that's our stepping stone beyond perception, beyond belief, to certainty. So just a little glimpse as to where we're going. Okay, and it says the whole value of right perception or accurate perception lies in the inevitable judgment, which correct perception necessarily entails, which is what? That perception itself is unnecessary. Okay, great. So that's the whole value in correct perception, is that you realize I don't even need perception. Okay, why do you need perception when you after you know something? Same as saying you don't need belief after you have accepted something as the truth. You don't need to have faith in something. You don't need to believe in something once you know it's true. Okay, so that's the whole value of correct perception, is that you realize I don't even need perception anymore, because the truth is true, no matter whether I see it or not. Okay, so it's talking about the value of correct perception, the value of learning how to see things accurately as they are in truth, not as we learned to see them from our past when we were mistaught about our truth. We were all mistaught about ourselves. We were all taught wrongly, falsely about ourselves. For instance, we were taught that we were just a body. For instance, we were taught that we were guilty. For instance, we were taught we could die. For instance, we were taught we were separate from everything. So we were mistaught. We were given misperceptions about ourselves in reality. And so now we have to learn anew the truth. Okay? And once you learn anew the truth about yourself, eventually you go beyond learning to just the experiencing of the truth about yourself. Okay? Right now we're learning that we're not a body. We're learning that we're innocent. We're learning that we're not separate from anyone or anything. We're learning there is no death. And that's great. That is a necessary stepping stone. But eventually we will accept that and we'll go beyond the learning phase. Okay? So thank God the learning phase is not forever. We're not always going to be in school learning. Okay, hallelujah for that. Eventually we're going to go beyond a learning and school and the classrooms in which we're learning to the truth. Okay, where we just experience it. We know it. We're being it. We're creating it. We're not just like, oh, I'm trying to learn the truth about myself. Okay, hope I don't forget. In this learning phase, we're hearing the truth, benefiting from it, and then forgetting it and suffering. And then we learn it again, remember it again, and experiencing the benefit, the rewards of it. And then we forget it and suffer from it, and it goes on like that. That's what it means to be in school. Still learning in the learning phase, okay? But this is saying that that phase is crucial. That learning phase of what is correct perception, what is truth is crucial, and then we go beyond it. Okay, so it's just a temporary, practical thing. Correct perception. Okay, beautiful. Hi, Rich. Happy birthday, Rich. And Carolina, hello to you. And beautiful. Okay, so here we go. So now it says, and realizing that perception, that correct perception itself is unnecessary. That removes the block entirely. Once you realize you don't even need perception. Now, it says, you may ask how this is possible as long as you appear to be living in this world. That is so true. You know, you talk about accurate perception, correct perception, so accurate, so consistent, that you go beyond perception, you realize you don't even need perception. Course in Miracles says you may rightly ask, how in the world can you experience that while still living in this world? Okay, how am I supposed to have accurate perception while I'm here? Come on now, okay? And it says, and since this is a sensible question, it has a sensible answer. So, So if you have asked that question, well, how am I supposed to have accurate perception consistently here? Then you have asked a sensible question, and it's going to give you a sensible answer. So then it says, but you must be careful that you really understand the question. What's the question? How am I supposed to have accurate perception and correct perception while I live here and have to go about my daily business in the world, doing all the things I got to do? How can I have accurate perception so consistently that I don't even need perception anymore? Come on. It says you need to be careful about the question, that you really understand the question. What is the you who are living in this world? Okay, oh, how am I supposed to apply the course consistently while living in the world? Come on. Well, who is the you who is living in the world? All right. It says you may have trouble with this question, but if you will try not to close your mind about who is the you that's living in this world, then you may decide that we are not engaging in denial after all. So that question, who is the you who is living in this world in the first place, that's not just an exercise in denial, okay? And it's going to touch on that later, okay? So we'll come back to that. Now, it says, okay, Maya says, I feel I was mistaught that the past experience has power over me or causation, but I'm learning my mind is causative. Beautiful, Maya. Yes, that's exactly what we're learning. And that's exactly what correct perception, the goal of having accurate perception, is for. It is for learning. It is for learning that what we've learned was false. It doesn't hold us back, and it doesn't have any power over us. So that is what we're learning. All right. I love it. Even in space, they have advertisements. Look what the Hubble telescope caught in space. They even have advertisements in space. How special is that? All right. I think I need to scan the videos I watch that I'm going to use better. All right. So paragraph 3. It says, to help you, it might be wise for you to review some related concepts with which you do not appear to have trouble, okay? So we're going to go from concept that you have some trouble with, like who is the me, who is living in the world, who is having trouble applying these ideas, to some concepts that you find easier. You may, for instance, like the idea of invisible realities, okay? So now we're going to get into some metaphysical, psychic phenomena kind of stuff, okay? You ready for that? Got the perfect background for that? It's been a theme that Greg and I have been talking about now for a few weeks. He says, we're going to go from something you have trouble understanding, like who is the you who's living in the world, to something easier to understand, like psychic phenomena, metaphysical things, other dimensions, invisible realities, and things like that. That's the easier stuff. That's great. Okay. It says you may, for instance, like the idea of invisible realities. Like, oh, there's other dimensions and realities all around me that you can't see. Yes, I do like those ideas. It says, and you might be particularly open to the concept of different orders of realities. Okay. Also, again, other densities, like other simultaneously existing realities as well. It says you may be into those ideas and enjoy those ideas. Well, yes, I do. Funny, you had mentioned in Course in Miracles. And funny how we find that easier to understand than what do you mean, who is the me that's living in this world? It says you may also find the notion of varying densities of energy appealing. Okay, so there's different densities, different, what does it say? Different notion of varying densities of energy appealing. Okay, so there's this density of energy, and there's a finer density of energy. You know, there's beings that are on this density and beings on this density and that density, and beings at 3D and 4D and 5D and 5D reality and 3D reality and 4D and all that. He says you may be interested in all that. And he says, while these are merely teaching aids, these other realities and other dimensions and other densities and invisible realities, what does he call them? These are merely teaching aids, all right? And it says, while these are merely teaching aids, this might be a good time to employ them. All righty, how interesting. So all those other invisible realities, or all those other psychic phenomena, psychic abilities, other dimensions, other realms, simultaneous realities, different dimensional realities, and beings who exist on those dimensions and other realities. These are teaching aids, okay? It's not the purpose and the focus of correct perception. They are teaching aids, and if you indeed have those abilities, if you indeed have those interests in other dimensions and invisible realities and psychic phenomena and things like that, this would be a good time to employ them. Isn't that great? Very funny. Okay. And in the notation here, it says something interesting here. It says that Bill, who helped Helen to bring through this material, had an interest in these metaphysical, psychic, other dimensional topics. And so the author is saying, hey, if you have that interest, that's wonderful. It's not the goal of correct perception. But if you have an interest in those other invisible realities or psychic phenomena, this would be a good time to employ them. Great. Okay. I love it. In other words, why? Because they are helpful teaching aids. So psychic phenomena, helpful teaching aid. Interest in invisible realities and multiple dimensions, simultaneous realities, very helpful teaching aids. Now, why are they helpful teaching aids, even though they might not be the goal of correct perception? Well, because the invisible realities or the multiple dimensions or simultaneous dimensions and psychic phenomena, it says it's the reason that they're helpful teaching aids is because immortality is a constant state. That's why they're only teaching aids instead of the ultimate goal of learning or understanding. Immortality is a constant state. What does that mean? That means immortality is as true now as it ever was or ever will be, because the state of immortality implies no change at all. Immortality is not a continuum, which means immortality, constant state, is not understood by comparing it with an opposite. Okay? So what is it that we're here to learn? Not that there's simultaneously existing different realities and dimensions. What we're here to learn ultimately is that there is a constant state. There is something that is an immortal state of being, like the source field or a consciousness, an immortal state of being that doesn't have shifts and change and variations and differences like different dimensions of reality. Even though different dimensions of reality is very interesting and could be very helpful, the goal here of correct perception, hi little boo-boos, the goal here is to understand a state of being, a reality, a consciousness that is immortal, that doesn't have variations of degrees. It doesn't change, okay? That is really the goal. But if learning about invisible realities and multiple dimensions and simultaneously existing dimensions is helpful for helping you to remember that which is an immortal, unchangeable source field state consciousness, then that's fabulous. And that is why those different interests in invisible realities and multiple dimensions is helpful, because it helps you to remember, helps you to expand your mind enough to be able to remember a constant state, an immortal state of being, of consciousness, maybe that we call the mind of God that we all share. Maybe we call it the source field. Maybe we call it the 0 point field. So lots of different names for that immortal state that we are all part of. Kitty-books. Kitty-book. Come on now. So, okay. Then it says this. The point being that knowledge, or the immortal state, never involves comparisons. So it's not about comparing. When you're talking about an immortal state, you're talking about knowledge, you're not talking about compared to this, it's immortal, or compared to that, it's this. It involves no comparisons. Knowledge, the immortal state. It says this is knowledge's essential difference from everything else that your mind can grasp. Okay? There are no contrasts, there are no comparisons. When you're talking about knowledge, when you're talking about an immortal state, there's nothing you can compare it to. That's what's different about knowledge, the immortal state, and accurate perception. With accurate perception, you can always compare that to something. All right. Okay, see why we got the space in the background, talking about a constant immortal state that never changes, that is always eternal for everyone in all space and time. And when you know that and have a certainty about that constant state that maybe we call immortality, maybe you call that the source field of mind of God, then you have knowledge. And then you don't need perception anymore. Because remember, perception's all about contrast and comparison, this compared to that, this in contrast to that, this reality compared to that reality, the visible reality compared to the invisible reality, this dimension compared to that dimension. That's a lot of contrast and comparison, okay? But there is something to know that is immortal, that needs to know that you can't compare to anything, okay? And once you experience reality, you will know that there's nothing you can compare it to. And you know you can't compare it to anything because when you try to express it in words, you can't. So, all right. In other words, the mind really just can't grasp knowledge, the immortal state. Our mind at this point, while we're still not even having correct perception, we can't even grasp it. So of course, don't worry about it. Don't have to grasp it. Okay. So then, now we're in paragraph 5. All right. So, and don't forget, if you have any questions, feel free to share them. All right. Okay. Les says, I am entitled to immortality. Yes, you are. Absolutely. Now, paragraph 5, it says, a little knowledge is not dangerous except to the ego. Okay, have you ever heard that phrase, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing? You know, that phrase, and that phrase implies that that a little knowledge is dangerous because, this is the ego thought, that if you have a little knowledge, then you usually mistake and think you know it all. You have a little knowledge, oh, I read this book, and now I know everything, okay? Or I've read all these books, and now I know it all. That's the meaning behind the ego phrase, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Because that's how we have used the little bit of knowledge that we have learned. We've used it to deceive ourselves that now we know everything, and now we know enough to judge, when we didn't. And so that's where that phrase, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. But now, A Course in Miracles is going to correct that interpretation. And so it says this, vaguely, the ego senses threat. Okay, so the ego is always feeling threat. There's a part of our belief system, there's a part of our belief about ourselves that's always vaguely sensing threat. But the ego is unable to realize that, quote, a little knowledge is a meaningless phrase because, quote, all and, quote, a little in this context are the same. And the ego decides that since all is impossible, the fear does not lie there. It says a little, however, is a scarcity concept, and this the ego understands well. Okay, so, instead of trying to figure out what that just said, it's now going to explain what it just said. So it's a wonderful thing about A Course in Miracles. If you don't understand what it said, just keep on reading, because that's all it's doing. It's just makes a statement, explains it, makes a statement, explains it. So just keep on going if you don't understand something. So in other words, the essential thing to remember here always is that the ego does not understand the real source of its perceived threat. Okay, so the ego is always feeling threatened, but it doesn't understand why it feels threatened. It doesn't understand what its threat is. Okay, so, and if you associate yourself with your ego, you don't perceive the whole situation as it really is. And it says, so if you're identifying with the ego, guess what you're going to be feeling all the time? A vague sense of threat, okay? Maybe you feel it as anxiety. Maybe you call it that free-floating or existential anxiety. But somehow you feel a sense of threat. Maybe it's just fear. Maybe it's depression. But if you're identifying with your ego, which is the same as saying identifying with your body, then you will be feeling a vague sense of threat that you do not understand. So the thing that makes you feel insecure, the thing that makes you feel anxious, you do not really understand what it is that you are feeling afraid of or what you feel threatened by. All you know is, I feel threatened, I feel anxious, I feel afraid. That's all you know, because that's all the ego knows, okay? So, and it says, in other words, you do not perceive the situation as it is. You do not understand the sense of threat as it really is. So, a good thing to tell yourself if you are feeling anxious. I do not understand. I do not perceive this situation, the whole situation as it is. I'm feeling threatened here. I feel afraid here, but I don't know why. Okay? So, good to know when you are feeling some anxiety and some fear. Remind yourself that you don't really know, you're not really perceiving the situation as it really is in its entirety. Okay. And when you feel anxious, remind yourself, I don't really know what I feel anxious about. I don't know what I feel, sense the threat really is. I just know I feel a sense of threat here. Okay. And that's the ego's constant state. The ego always feels threatened. That is what the ego can't help but feel. And if you identify with your ego, you will feel afraid. You will feel threatened all the time by everything, even though you're not sure why. Okay, great. Now, beautiful. And Irene says the ego does not understand the perceived threat. That's right. And Les says immortal knowledge is a wonderful thing. And thank you guys for all the hearts. Those are so nice to see. Now, talking about the ego, what's the ego? It's a vague sense of threat that you don't understand and your ego doesn't understand. To me, that's a lot of what anxiety is. It's a sense of threat that you don't really understand. You know, I feel anxious, but I can't really say why. I call it existential guilt. I experience it myself, and as a therapist, I perceive that my clients experience it a lot. And I think we all do, and we just all deal with it in different ways. We have different coping mechanisms. We all feel the sense of threat that the ego feels because we're all identifying with our egos. And so we all feel that fear, that existential angst and anxiety, but we attribute it to a bunch of ideals that our ego tells us that we have failed. So when we're feeling anxious and we're feeling afraid, instead of going, oh, I'm feeling all the fear and anxiety and stress and threat that my ego feels all the time. Oh, that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the sense of threat that my ego always feels. Oh, okay. I guess that must mean I'm identifying with my ego. So, maybe I'll just practice identifying with my spirit. Okay, that's not typically how we deal with our sense of anxiety and fear, but we could. We could go, what's really going on here is that I'm identifying with my ego, which is always afraid, always feels threatened by everything, always feels anxious and afraid of everything. And instead of trying to make some insane arrangement with the world to help me feel safe, which never worked, we could do what A Course in Miracles is teaching us how to do, and to in that moment identify with our true self, our spirit self, and then experience what our spirit self experiences, which isn't threat. Our true self isn't always like, always experiencing threat and on the lookout for what to be careful of. Okay, our spirit self is something that knows that we exist in an immortal state of love, of safety, of peace, of supply, of security in our identity. And so that is what we're learning how to do when we feel anxious and when we feel afraid. Instead of misidentifying the source of the threat or fear and making some insane arrangement with the world, we're going to now go within and remember our true self and experience all the peace and security and safety that comes from that. Okay? So that's what A Course in Miracles is reminding us that we could do if we want to. If we get tired of feeling that sense of anxiety and fear all the time and paying the price for its effects in our body and on our relationships and in our lives. Okay? I'm tired of paying the price for all the effects of the anxiety that manifest in my body and manifest in my relationships and manifest in my life. Okay? They are too expensive, they hurt, and they don't protect me. They don't really make me feel safe. All the fear, all the anxiety, all the defensiveness, all the anger, all that stuff that I have done in the past to handle that sense of threat that really is coming from my ego, it never made me feel any safer at all. It didn't help at all, and it had a very high price tag that I paid for that. So, enough of that. Enough of that. I love it. Carly says, I'm never upset for the reason I think. Exactly what it's saying. And Irene says, ego is a veiled threat. Yes. Ego can't help but feel anything but threat. Okay, that's just the nature of the ego. And you guys know what I'm talking about, right? About that existential anxiety where you just feeling anxiety and fear and you don't know why. Well, that's what your ego is experiencing all the time. Okay, your ego is a big old threat detector, and it's a threat projector, and so it's a threat detector because it's a threat projector. That's what the ego's about. And remember, what could the ego feel except threat? The ego feels nothing but threat from you because your ego knows that at any moment its maker could say, hit the road, Jack. And your ego knows that. And your ego also knows that if you remember the truth about your source, your creator, that you would immediately laugh the ego away. It would be gone. The ego knows that you are its host and that you could make it homeless like that. And so that's why the ego feels threatened by you. You know, but on the surface, it's telling you, I'm your friend, you need me, I'll take care of you, I'll protect you, while right behind your back, it is using you, you know, and giving you a sense of fear and threat, okay, and telling you that that's your fear, okay. The fear and the sense of threat that you experience, that's not yours, that's the ego's, okay. The ego is always feeling threatened by the possibility of being seen for what it is and told to hit the road. Okay, the ego is always feeling threatened by the truth that you could at any moment accept the truth about yourself, and the ego would be gone, it'd be homeless. Okay, so the ego is always at risk. It's always feeling anxious. It's always feeling threatened. But the ego never says, I feel really threatened by the truth that you're studying. I feel really threatened by the idea that you might any moment realize that your truth and then tell me to hit the road. The ego never says that. The ego only says, hey, you are under threat. You're gonna die. You should feel anxious. You should feel afraid. Something bad is gonna happen to you. And that's all. So it doesn't say, I feel scared. It says, you should feel scared. You are under attack. You are under threat. And you should be afraid. And you should defend yourself. Now, what we could do instead when we feel fear and sense of threat is we could go, wow, my ego is really afraid of something right now. I wonder what it is. I wonder why my ego is freaking out, scared, anxious right now. I wonder why. And ask those questions, okay? So instead of being like, okay, what is it where's the threat? What is it? And how do I defend myself? And I gotta figure this out. Oh my God, maybe is it that? Is it money? Is it the relationship? Is it the world? What is it? Look at it like my ego is feeling very threatened right now, very scared right now, and it has gone from suspicious to vicious. So I must be close to some truth about myself, okay? And let me just go ahead and finish my ego off and go for some truth, okay? That's what we could do instead. All right, so then it wants you to know this. Only your allegiance to the ego gives the ego any power over you. Okay, now you could just put in problems where it says ego. Only your allegiance to your fear, to this problem. Only your allegiance to guilt. Only your allegiance to fear gives this fear or guilt or problem any power over you. So how much power does this problem seem to have over you? So I want you to ask yourself that question. And the more power you've given this problem over you, that's how afraid you are and anxious you will be about this problem. Okay, I'm really anxious about this problem because I have really given it a bunch of power over me. And that's why I'm afraid of this problem or this person or this situation. So, good to know when you got a problem going on that seems like it has more power than you do. Okay? So, something to remember. And it says, yeah, Tricia says, wow, my ego has just been uncovered. Exactly. I know. That's why the ego don't like A Course in Miracles. And that's why if you are studying A Course in Miracles or watching this, you must not be your ego. Okay? Because no ego, no self-respecting ego will be reading this book or watching this class. So, good job. Now, it says, we have spoken of the ego as if the ego were a separate thing acting on its own. So seeing the ego as a separate thing outside of me, acting on its own, was necessary to persuade us that we cannot dismiss the ego lightly. What does that mean? We must not dismiss the ego lightly. It means we must realize how much of our own thinking is ego directed. Okay? So it's not about going into denial and dismissing the ego lightly. Oh, that's just the ego. Nope. You've got to realize how much of your own thinking is ego directed. We've got to realize just how much power that we've given our egos over us. Okay, that is a necessary understanding, a necessary process. So we talk about the ego like it's something out there, and so that you come to understand how much of your own thinking is ego directed. That's part of the process of realizing, oh, that's my ego. Oh, look at all the power I've given it over me. Oh, that's why I'm so afraid of this particular problem, or the ego in general. Okie dokie. That is, and it says, but we cannot safely leave it at that, or you will regard yourself as necessarily conflicted as long as you are here, or more properly, as long as you believe that you are here. Okay, so we're supposed to realize how much of our thinking is ego directed, how much power we've given our ego over us, but we don't stop there. We will keep on going after that. Okay, or else we will believe that we're here. Okay, so that's intriguing. That's the second time it has mentioned that maybe we're not here, but we believe we're here. That's a very interesting statement. This is the second time that it's made that. So you will be conflicted as long as you believe that you're here, if you don't realize just how much of your thinking has been ego directed, and if you don't realize how much power you've given this problem or your ego over you. Okay, so we realize that, but we don't stop there. Because if we stop there, we're going to believe, we'll just be conflicted as long as we're here, or as long as we believe we are here. Very interesting. I think that has something to do with that statement you realize that you are in the world, but you are not of the world. So that is an awareness, an understanding that helps us to be here, but not to be a victim of the world that we experience. That will enable us to have an ego, but not give the ego all this power over us. And so that's the goal of correct perception. I have an ego, I've made an ego, but I am not my ego. I made the ego, not the other way around. Even though I made the ego, I am still the one who has the power, not my ego. So that's the awareness that enables us to not have conflict here, to be here, but not to be freaking out all the time. Okay? If you're here but you know that you're not of the world, that this is not your home, you're not stuck here, this is not the ultimate reality, this isn't who you are, this isn't the only game going on, then you can be here without conflict. Okay? When you're here in the world, in a body, and you think this is all there is, and you're little and weak while it is powerful, well, then you're going to be scared. You're going to feel a sense of threat all the time. You're going to experience a lot of conflict. When you realize that you are kind of here, but you're also somewhere else. This is not really your home. You only seem to be here. You also have another life, the life of your spirit, who ain't stuck here in a body, in this experience. And you'll be relaxed more. You'll be more relaxed. This dream will become funnier. Okay, not so tragic. Okay, so very interesting. And we're going to talk about that other life. Okay, so what it's saying is that You believe you are here. Now, as long as you think you are your ego, and you're identifying with your ego, and you think you're a body, and you feel all that sense of threat and fear that your ego's in all the time, and you don't know that's just your ego, then you're going to have a lot of conflict while you're here or while you believe you're here. Okay, so now it's going to talk about this whole concept about you believe you're here. Okay, so it kind of sounds kind of far out and metaphysical, but now it's going to talk about something very far out and metaphysical. Okay, so that's why I got this far out space visuals going on. Okay, so you ready for something super far out? Something very metaphysical, like about all that other dimensional stuff, invisible realities, simultaneously existing dimensions that you also might be in. Okay, you ready for that? Okay, here we go. It says this. It says your ego is nothing more than a part of your belief about yourself. That's all your ego is. It's just a part, a little part of your belief about yourself. It says your other life, do you hear that? Your other life has continued without interruption. What other life? Your other life that doesn't involve your ego. You have a whole nother life that your ego don't even have a part of. Wow. Okay? Your ego life, the life that you identify with your body and your ego and your problems and the limitations and the lack that you call your life, that's just a part of your life. Okay? That's just one of your lives. All right, says the Course. Now, it says your other life has continued without interruption. Did you know you have another life that is continuing without the ego interruption? And your other life, which has continued without ego interruption, has been and always will be totally unaffected by your attempts to dissociate it, to forget about it, to be in denial about it. Okay, so good to know. Now we're hearing about your other lives. We're hearing about invisible realities. We're talking about other dimensions, other densities. Now it's talking about other lives. So you have another life that has continued without your ego interruption, that is totally unaffected and always will be totally unaffected by all your attempts to dissociate it, to forget about it, to be in denial about it. You may not have a life that isn't being threatened and limited by my ego. Alrighty, great, good to know. And then it says the ratio of repression and dissociation of truth varies with the individual ego illusion. But dissociation is always involved, or you would not believe that you are here. Okay, so here's another reference to that. So in other words, now the degree of suppression or repression or dissociation of your other life, okay, that depends, what does it say? It says, it varies with individual ego illusion. So in other words, some people have suppressed, repressed, or forgotten the truth of their other life more than other people have. It just depends on how dense your ego identification really is. Some people are very aware that they have an existence that goes beyond the body and goes beyond this world. Some people know that and they have experiences of that. Sometimes we call those people who have special psychic abilities. These are folks who have awarenesses that come from beyond their body or from the world as we know it. because they are not dissociating or denying or suppressing or repressing the lessons and the abilities and the power and the joy that their other life, that they are experiencing in their other life beyond their fearful ego. Okay, and good reminder that if we weren't dissociating our other life, we could be experiencing it, enjoying it, reaping the benefits of it, getting the rewards of it, getting the awareness of it, getting the peace, the abilities, the resources of our life that is beyond the one that we're experiencing right now. Okay, very far out, and very far out, and it says we know that there's some level of forgetting and dissociating of your other life going on. How do we know according to this? Because otherwise you wouldn't believe you were here. If you weren't in denial and dissociating your other life, you wouldn't even believe you were here. Isn't that crazy? That's pretty far out and pretty wild. If I was kept awareness of my other life, then I wouldn't even believe I was here in this illusion called my life and my world as I know it. Very far out. Very metaphysical, don't you think? Okay, that's so good, don't have to believe it. That's so helpful. Okay, but if that is true, that our other life, which has not been affected at all by the ego's attempts to forget it or to dissociate it, if it is true that it is existing and is unaffected by my ego who's trying to forget it, well, guess what? That means I can access that and remember that anytime I want to. And from that awareness, from that other life, I can bring back to my experience of this one all kinds of abilities, helpful, useful, healing, manifesting abilities that in my other life are natural. Only here in this life I think, oh, that's weird. That's an unnatural ability. That's weird. That's of the devil. Okay. But in my other life, I know that it's 100% natural to manifest your thoughts immediately, or to be able to read the thoughts of everyone instantaneously, telepathy, clairvoyance, all of that. That's natural in reality. In your other life, you have all those abilities, creative abilities, healing abilities. You have all those abilities very naturally. And so, and we can access them. You would be totally accessing them if you weren't dissociating, which means forgetting or being in denial that you have a life beyond the body. This is not your only life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. This life where you're stuck in a body, where you seem to be very limited, you seem to die, maybe get sick, and everybody else seems to die and get sick. This is not your only life. Now, every time you close your eyes, every time you meditate, every time you go within looking for the eternal truth within you and the eternal truth of you, you are going through the portal, making a passage back to your real life, your other life, your real life, your life beyond limitation, beyond the body, beyond fear, beyond the ego. The ego life is not your only life. The ego life is not your only world, okay? Oh, I love hearing that. It's so wonderful. It gives me more motivation to meditate more, actually, to go within, to remember myself that isn't my ego. It gives me more motivation to close my eyes and to go within, to remember something within me that is not limited, that is eternal, that is guiltless and timeless and free, that is spirit, that isn't a body. Okay? And as I remember my real truth here, I will realize I'm not really here. I'll realize I'm actually in heaven. That's what the Course means when it says that you're really in heaven, asleep, dreaming that you are in exile on planet hell. That's what the Course means when it says that. So I was wondering, what does that mean? I'm at home in God, asleep and dreaming that I'm somewhere else besides at home in God. Like, what does that mean? That's what this means. That you have another life at home in God. Maybe you call that heaven. Maybe you call that reality. Whatever you call that. And that in that reality, you're asleep and dreaming that you're here stuck in a body, limited in a body that is limited and dies, okay, and that can be separate, okay. So this is a dream that we are dreaming. We're dreaming that we're here. Now, it also says something very interesting. If you want to have peace here, if you want to minimize conflict here, then it says, remember that you're not here. So when you're experiencing conflict, it's saying, remember that, this is not the be-all, end-all of reality. And so you don't need to take it so seriously. You can laugh at it. You can take it more lightly, okay? So what better way to have happiness here than to realize you're not really here? So as what the Course says. All right. And thank God we don't have to understand any of that to experience the rewards of that, the release of that, the benefit of that. Wonderful. Okay. Beautiful. Tricia says, this is so great. I'm going to watch this a few times. Beautiful. Me too. Jimmy says, portals make the best vacations. Exactly. Now there is a staycation, the best one I've ever heard of. You don't need to pay for an expensive vacation. Close your eyes. Remember that you have another life beyond the body, beyond fear, beyond this problem, beyond limitation, and let your mind take you there. Course in Miracles says, if you'll let it, your mind will take you home. If you let it. If you'll release your mind from the guilt and the fear that keeps it here, then your mind will just take you back to your other life. That your mind, your real mind, not your ego, but your real mind knows the way back to your real life, back home, to heaven, whatever you want to call it, to the real world. And that if you will release your mind from the bounds, from the binds of guilt, it will be like, all right, I'm out of here. Come on. And it will take you with it. So now, and for free. And then you get to go and experience your other life and the healing and the benefits and the satisfaction and the peace and the joy and the fulfillment. And you come back and you look at your watch, it was 5 minutes. And you're like, wait, whoa. How'd that happen? But when you go to your other life and experience the healing of that experience and the empowerment of it, where you're going, there is no time. So, so you could experience a whole lifetime of bliss and fulfillment, and it seems like you've only been gone 5 minutes. Okay. That's one of the great, powerful benefit joys of meditation. Okay. All right. So, beautiful. Hi, Carla. Good to see you. All right. Yes, Jonas says, lose yourself. Exactly. Let yourself go home. All right. So, now, then it says, how are we doing on our video? Okay, so now we're still doing the space station. Okay, we're going far out, really far out today. Now, I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Wow.
12.
How are we doing on time here? Okay, great. Now we're on paragraph 8. And it says, when I told you to concentrate on the phrase, "Here I am, Lord," I did not mean in this world. I didn't mean here I am in this world. Okay? It says to say, "Here I am, Lord." But it doesn't mean here I am on earth, here I am in the world. That's not what it meant. It says, I wanted you to think of yourself as a distinct consciousness. Okay. When it says to say, "Here I am, Lord," it says, I want you to think of yourself as a distinct consciousness, a consciousness that is capable of direct communication with the creator of that consciousness. Okay, so that's what our creator wants us to think of ourselves as. Okay? Not a body, but a distinct consciousness. Okay, what am I? I am a consciousness that is distinct. Okay, and I'm a consciousness that's in direct communication with the creator of my consciousness. Okay, great. That is what it means to say, "Here I am, Lord. Here I am. I'm a consciousness that's distinct, that is in direct communication with you, the creator of my consciousness. Here I am, Lord. I want to communicate with you. I am a consciousness that is in direct communication with you. I want to communicate with you. I'm ready to communicate with you, God." Okay. Imagine what would happen if that is how you were seeing yourself and regarding yourself and your eyes were closed. And it says, you must begin to think of yourself as a very powerful receiving and sending channel. Okay? We are going far out deep in this session. Okay? It's saying, I want you to think of yourself as a distinct consciousness that is in direct, that is capable of direct communication with the creator of your consciousness. I also want you to think of yourself as a what? A very powerful receiving and sending channel. A channel of communication. A very powerful sending and receiving channel of communication. It wants us to see ourselves as a very powerful sending and receiving channel of communication. We are a consciousness, a distinct consciousness that is capable of direct communication with the creator of our consciousness. Okay, is that far out enough for you? We are very powerful sending and receiving channels of communication. Okay, now, is that how you were thinking of yourself today? Now, if that is true about you, if that is true about us, then where's the limitation on communication there? Where's the limitation on connection? Where's the limitation on knowledge, on information? Where? Okay? If our consciousness is a very powerful sending and receiving channel, then what is it that we can't hear? Whom is it that we can't communicate with? What answers can't we receive if that is the truth about us, our consciousness? Okay? That's why in the teacher's manual it talks about that there are no unnatural psychic powers. It's very natural that we have psychic abilities, psychic powers, telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, all of that. That's natural for us because we are a consciousness. We are each a distinct consciousness that's in direct communication with the source of our consciousness. And so we are, as a distinct consciousness, we are very powerful sending and receiving channels. So what is it what information and knowledge could you not receive? Whom is it that you could not be in communication with anywhere, anytime, ever? Wow, interesting connection to the whole psychic ability theme that we've been working on. Big time. Big time. Wow. Okay. Now, notice it said you must begin to think of yourself as a very powerful receiving and sending channel.
Not just a powerful, but very powerful. Like those radio stations, some are local.
Yes, yes.
And some add power wattage so they can be heard across the broader ranges.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Heard that.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're mega stations. They're very powerful stations.
Yes.
Not just local.
Thank you for saying that. So I like what Greg is saying is that you're not just a local broadcasting and receiving station. You are a very powerful one, meaning you're a broadcasting station that goes out very, very far. We definitely have broadcasting stations on Earth that man-made that go out into space, okay? And we have receiving dishes here on on Earth that receive impulses and messages from very far off in space. Okay, that's like what we are. That's what we are. And you must begin to think of yourself like that. Okay. Very interesting. Wonderful. I wonder why it is saying that we must begin to think of ourselves as a very powerful receiving and sending channel. Okay? Why do you suppose it's saying we need to begin to think of ourselves like that? Well, for one thing, you will be very, very conscious of your thoughts. If you know that you are broadcasting your thoughts very far out, okay, affecting a constellation greater than you could ever imagine, then you're going to be more selective, more conscious about the thoughts that you choose. Same thing about your very powerful receiving channel. Okay? You will also be more likely to be more conscious about your thoughts. And that's the name of the game here. Remember, the goal is accurate perception, correct perception. Okay? So, now, also, it's very important to begin to think of yourself as a very powerful receiving and sending channel. Why? Because you are affecting your brothers and sisters. You're affecting everything that has life. If you're broadcasting everything you think in a very powerful way, that means you are affecting your brothers and sisters and everything that has life. You are affecting, you are sending out thoughts to the world, okay? More than you can even conceive of. Now, then it tells us why that's important. I love it. Demi says satellites, that's right. Yes. And Irene says, and when deciding to put my kitty down yesterday, my mother's voice came to me from heaven and said, let her go, honey. I've got her. Beautiful. Yes. Irene, you are broadcasting, you're sending and receiving communication from farther than you realize. You're receiving it from farther than you realize, and you're sending messages farther than you realize. In other words, even farther than seemingly death. Okay? We're broadcasting messages beyond the illusion of death, and we're receiving messages from beyond the illusion of death. We are a sending, receiving channel. That's what we are. We are channels. Okay? Speaking of psychic abilities, we're all channels. We're all channels. What does that mean, channels? We are very powerful sending and receiving channels. Okay, did you know you were a channel? Okay, were you that person who thought channels were weird? Well, surprise, you're a channel, and a very powerful one, is sending messages and receiving them, even beyond death, even beyond this planet. Okay, good to know. We have completely underestimated our power as sending and receiving channels. We have completely 100% underestimated our power as a consciousness. We're not bodies, we are consciousness. A consciousness that is sending and receiving messages. Okay, very far out. That's why we got the cosmic visuals going on here. Then it says your great debt to your brothers and sisters, your great debt to them is something that you should never forget. Okay? It says your great debt to others is exactly the same debt that you owe to me, says our teacher. And whenever you react egotistically toward another, you are throwing away the graciousness of your indebtedness and the holy perception it would produce. Okay? So, and it says the reason why the term holy can be used here is that as you learn how much you are indebted to the entire family of God, which includes me, says our teacher, you come as close to knowledge as perception ever can. And then this gap is so small that knowledge can easily flow across it and obliterate it forever. Okay. So, it's interesting that it goes from talking about you're a distinct consciousness and you're a very powerful sending and receiving channel. And it goes from that straight to your debt to your brothers and sisters is a debt that you should never forget. Okay? Very interesting. To me, the bridge between those two thoughts is that because you're a very powerful receiving channel, you have been receiving blessing. You have been receiving all the good that's ever been extended by all your brothers and sisters and your teacher and your source throughout time. You have been the beneficiary of every loving thought, of every positive extension of energy that has ever come from any brother and sister and from any being ever. That's how powerful of a receiving channel you are. And because that's what's really going on, you should, your correct perception of every brother and sister anywhere and everywhere is indebtedness, which means gratitude. And it's saying that correct perception is when you have gratitude, when you recognize that you are profoundly indebted to all brothers and sisters anywhere, that you have benefited from every positive thought and vibration anywhere at any time. It says that that awareness of indebtedness or gratitude, it produces holy perception. Wow, holy perception, Batman. And it says holy perception is a perception that comes so close to knowledge. So close to knowledge. Holy perception comes so close to knowledge that knowledge can easily flow across the gap and obliterate the gap forever. Wow. Now that's some holy perception. It means that your perception becomes so refined, so purified, that it comes so close to eternal knowledge, eternal awareness, that the gap is so small, eternal awareness just closes that gap, and then you have eternal awareness. So you go from indebtedness to others, profound gratitude to everyone and everything for all of the good energy and thoughts that you have benefited from. And you go from that to you have an awareness of something that lasts forever and supplies all needs at all times and even obliterates lack and need and death forever. Whew, that's what we call holy perception. Isn't that deep, that your the awareness of your indebtedness to your brothers and sisters anywhere and everywhere produces holy, produces rarefied. It takes your perception so high that it goes to the highest reaches of perception and then just goes right almost to eternal knowledge, awareness that is eternal, that is, we can't even conceive of what that is. Whoa. And so, in other words, it says you are a very powerful sending and receiving channel. That means your thoughts are going out very far, and you're receiving thoughts from very far, which means, and the Course in Miracles says you don't realize this, but you are being benefited by every loving thought of anyone, anywhere, anytime. What? Yeah, that has to be the case if we're one. Well, if that's the case, then you're being benefited and blessed all the time, and you don't know it. And the only correct and accurate perception would be gratitude. Okay? If you're not experiencing indebtedness or gratitude to everyone, then you're not perceiving correctly. You're not realizing what's going on. And if they're not experiencing gratitude to you and indebtedness to you, then they don't have accurate perception, and they won't have corrected perception. So unless you're experiencing gratitude or indebtedness to others, you don't have accurate perception, which means you won't have happy perception. You won't have high perception. So just remember that. If I'm not perceiving with gratitude or indebtedness to others in the situation, I'm not perceiving correctly. And so don't take so seriously whatever you're perceiving. You're not perceiving correctly. If you could see what was really going on for real, if you could see yourself as a consciousness that is sending and receiving in a very powerful channel, then you would only have gratitude. You'd only feel grateful for everyone and everything. Okay? And so just know that that's what correct perception, that's the symptom of correct perception. All right. Now, I am going to stop here for today. Let's see. We got a few more. We got a bunch more paragraphs, so we're going to stop here. But wow, super far out session today. My goodness. When I chose that cosmic stuff, I didn't realize, I didn't see the connection between the section and deep space truth today. So that was just a total spirit setup. Thank you, Spirit. So beautiful. So I'm thrilled to have shared this Course in Miracles section with you. I love your participation and your feedback and your energy. It felt so good. Sometimes when doing this, material, it really helps to have your energy. It helps a lot because sometimes it's so deep. So I appreciate you sharing and investing your time and energy in this. If you feel like this could be helpful for the world, our brothers and sisters out there, then share it on your timeline. And then also, if you would like to see more of my classes, you can go to my YouTube channel and find my classes in a more easily accessible way. And when you do go to my YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe, and then shortly then I'll be able to just go straight to YouTube and broadcast live on YouTube. So thank you for that. Also, I'm a holistic psychotherapist, have been for a long time, and I have a psychotherapeutic niche called Miracle Psychotherapeutics, where I offer one-on-one sessions for people who would like some support, some psychotherapeutic support through something they're going through, but they want it from a Course in Miracles perspective. So I'm available for that one-on-one. You can, to set something like that up, you can private message me here on Facebook, or you can go to my website, annikujawa.com, and find my phone number there and then text me from there. It's the best way to reach me. Awesome. I appreciate you guys so much of helping to co-create this healing circle. Now, we're going to end this session like I always end my sessions, which is with an integration meditation, where we close our eyes and we breathe and we use the ideas. We apply them and use them, so that we're not just talking about the ideas, we're using them, because that's how we really change our minds. That's how we accept them. Beautiful. Thank you for that reminder, Les. Okay, and thank you, Tricia. I appreciate you so much. Okay, so here we go. I want you to close your eyes and take a breath. And just breathe and feel. Breathe and feel. All right, so we're going to start with this. We're going to start with one of the instructions that was in this section. It says, I want you to think of yourself as a distinct consciousness that is capable of direct communication with the creator of that consciousness. So, okay, so let's do that. I am not a body. I am a distinct consciousness. I am a distinct consciousness capable of direct communication with the creator of my consciousness. Which is the same as saying I'm not a body and I'm not just here. Which means I have another life. I want you to tell yourself, I have an other life that has continued without my ego body interruption. And I want you to say to yourself, I'd like to experience my other life that has continued without my ego's interruption. I would like to experience my life beyond my body, beyond this world. I'd like to know that I'm not stuck here, that this isn't it, this isn't all I have, all I can do and be. I want to experience the life that my spirit lives. See what it sees and go where it goes. I am not a body. I'm not this body. The world is not my home. I'd like to go home for a little bit and enjoy that. Be healed by being home. Experience the limitlessness, the freedom, the peace, the oneness of being home, my other life. Free your mind from here. And breathe. Beautiful. Now I want you to begin to think of yourself as a very powerful receiving and sending channel. You are a very powerful receiving channel, receiving energy, light, love, truth, knowledge from great, great distances. There is no information or knowledge you can't receive. There is no one near or far that you cannot communicate with. I am in direct communication with the creator of my consciousness. And I am grateful. I am indebted to all the beings from whom I have received their loving thoughts. I am indebted to all the souls anywhere and everywhere in all space and time for their loving thoughts that I have received. I am indebted. I am grateful. Allowing yourself to see and experience yourself as a consciousness, unlimited, giving, sending, and receiving channel. Wonderful. And then open your eyes when you're ready. Open your eyes and yawn and stretch and breathe and wiggle your fingers and your toes. Wow. Dang. Bringing my consciousness back to my body is gotta breathe. All right. So good job, guys. I appreciate you joining this healing circle. Good work. You did good work. This is the real work. This is the good work. This is how you accept the healing of your own consciousness and then extend it out to the world as the very powerful sending and receiving channel that you are. I appreciate your participation and your support, and I thank you for all of your loving, brilliant thoughts that I have benefited from. I am eternally indebted to you, and I appreciate you. Thank you, and I will see you next time I see you.